My husband had a secret second life, but I had a secret he never saw coming. The perfect life that was never real. Hook plus opening. I used to believe that the strongest marriages were built on trust. I believed that if two people loved each other enough, no secret could survive for long. I was wrong. For 6 years, I shared a home, a bed, and a future with the man I thought I knew better than anyone else. Then one ordinary Thursday afternoon, a single text message appeared on his phone. It wasn't the message that destroyed my marriage. It was the name attached to it, because that name belonged to a woman who called him my husband. But what Michael never knew was that I had been hiding a secret of my own, a secret that would change both of our lives forever. And when the truth finally came out, only one of us walked away with everything. My name is Emma Carter, and until I turned 34, I believed my life was almost perfect. My husband, Michael, was the kind of man everyone admired. He was successful, calm, generous, and charming enough to make every room feel brighter. Neighbors loved him. Friends respected him. My parents considered him the son they never had. Even strangers smiled whenever he spoke. If someone had told me my husband was living another life, I would have laughed, because Michael knew exactly how to become the man everyone wanted him to be. Every weekday, he left our home at exactly 7:15 in the morning. He kissed my forehead, picked up his leather briefcase, grabbed his coffee, and always said the same words. "I'll be home before dinner." Most evenings, he was. Sometimes he wasn't. When he came home late, he always had a reasonable explanation. A client meeting, traffic, an emergency at work, a delayed business dinner. Every excuse sounded believable. After all, I trusted him. Trust has a strange way of making lies sound like truth. I worked as an interior designer from home. My schedule was flexible. Michael often joked that I had the better life. You get to stay home while I deal with impossible clients. I'd laugh. "If you want to switch jobs, we can." He'd smile. Never. Looking back, that smile wasn't happiness. It was relief. Because every day I stayed home. I stayed away from the truth. Our marriage wasn't perfect. No marriage is. We argued about small things. Dirty dishes, weekend plans, money, children. Michael always wanted to wait. "Let's enjoy life a little longer," he'd say. I agreed. I didn't know that waiting was exactly what he needed. Because the longer we delayed building our family, the longer he could keep his secret life hidden. Our house looked like something from a magazine. White walls, large windows, fresh flowers every Friday, family photographs everywhere. Anyone visiting would have believed we were the happiest couple in the neighborhood. That's the dangerous thing about appearances. They rarely tell the truth. One Saturday afternoon, my best friend, Rachel, came over for coffee. She looked around the house and smiled. "You really have everything." I laughed. "I guess I do." Rachel stirred her coffee without looking at me. "Do you ever wonder why Michael works so much?" I frowned. "What do you mean?" "Nothing." "No, seriously." She hesitated. "I just think, sometimes people hide behind work." I shrugged. "He's ambitious." She nodded slowly. "I hope that's all it is." At the time, I thought she was overthinking. Today, I wish I had listened. A week later, everything changed. It started with something unbelievably small. Michael forgot his phone on the kitchen counter. That had never happened before. He guarded that phone like it contained government secrets. Not because he acted suspicious, because he was careful. Too careful. 5 minutes after he left, the phone buzzed. I wasn't trying to invade his privacy. Honestly, I only wanted to tell him he had forgotten it. The screen lit up. One message. One name. Sophia Redhart. The preview read, "Our daughter keeps asking when you're coming home." I froze. I read it again. Then again. My hand started shaking. Our daughter. Michael and I didn't have children. So who was she talking about? For several seconds, I couldn't breathe. Maybe there was another explanation. Maybe it wasn't what it looked like. Maybe. Another message appeared. "She made you a birthday card. Don't disappoint her again." Birthday card. Again. Not once. Again. That meant this wasn't new. This had been happening for a long time. My entire world suddenly felt like it was built on glass. And I had just heard the first crack. The first crack in the lie. For almost a full minute, I stood in the kitchen, staring at Michael's phone. The words on the screen refused to make sense. Our daughter keeps asking when you're coming home. She made you a birthday card. My heart pounded so loudly that it drowned out every other sound in the house. I wanted to unlock the phone. I wanted answers. But Michael had recently changed his passcode. At the time, he had laughed and said, "My company updated its security policy. We all have to be more careful." I believed him. Now, every innocent explanation suddenly sounded like another carefully rehearsed lie. I picked up the phone to call him. Before I could press his name, the front door alarm chimed. For one terrifying second, I thought he had come back. Instead, it was only the delivery driver dropping off a package. I quickly placed the phone exactly where he had left it. 10 minutes later, Michael rushed through the front door. "I forgot my phone," he said with a nervous smile. I handed it to him. "You never forget it." He chuckled, but something about the laugh felt forced. "Guess I'm getting old." His eyes met mine for only a second before looking away. That was the first time I noticed it. He wasn't afraid of getting caught. He was afraid I had already seen something. That evening, Michael acted like nothing had happened. He asked about my day, complimented dinner, even suggested we watch a movie together. Meanwhile, I couldn't stop hearing those two messages echoing inside my head. Our daughter. Every smile he gave me now felt like another performance. Every kind word sounded rehearsed. I wanted to confront him immediately, but another voice inside me whispered, "If he's been lying for years, one question won't make him tell the truth." So I stayed quiet. For the first time in our marriage, I started watching my husband instead of trusting him. The next few days became an investigation. I noticed little things that I had ignored before. Every Tuesday, he stayed late at work. Every second Saturday, he disappeared for golf with clients. He always paid for certain things in cash, and he never let me wash the inside pockets of his jackets. Individually, none of those things seemed suspicious. Together, they painted a completely different picture. Rachel noticed a change in me almost immediately. "You look exhausted," she said during lunch. "I'm just stressed." She leaned forward. "No." "What?" "You're hiding something." For a moment, I almost told her everything. But I stopped myself. If Michael really had another family, I needed facts before emotions. So I simply smiled. "I'll be okay." Rachel wasn't convinced. "I hope so." 3 days later, something unexpected happened. Michael announced another business trip. Chicago. 2 nights. Normally, I would have kissed him goodbye. This time, I watched him pack. He folded clothes with military precision. 1 suitcase, 1 laptop bag. Everything looked normal. Except, he packed a small stuffed rabbit, pink ears, white fur, something a little girl would love. When he noticed me looking at it, he quickly smiled. "Oh, that's for a client. His daughter is in the hospital." The explanation came too fast. Too perfectly. Almost as if he had practiced it before. I nodded, but inside, another piece of my trust shattered. The morning he left, I waited exactly 20 minutes before getting into my car. I had never followed anyone before. Certainly not my husband. But I needed the truth. Michael drove toward the airport, until suddenly, he didn't. Instead of taking the airport exit, he continued straight, then turned into a quiet suburban neighborhood nearly 40 minutes away. My hands tightened around the steering wheel. He parked in front of a small blue house with a white fence. A little girl, no older than 6, ran out of the front door laughing. "Daddy!" She threw herself into his arms. Michael lifted her into the air, spinning her around while she giggled. Then a woman stepped outside. She smiled at him. Not politely, not like a friend, like someone welcoming her husband home. She kissed him, softly, naturally, comfortably, as if they had done it 1,000 times before. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I watched my husband walk into that house, holding the little girl's hand. The front door closed behind them. And just like that, everything I believed about my marriage disappeared. But as I sat frozen across the street, I noticed something else. A black SUV parked 2 houses away. Inside sat an older man wearing sunglasses. He wasn't reading. He wasn't on his phone. He was watching the blue house. Watching Michael. Watching everyone. I had no idea who he was. But somehow, I knew the story had just become much bigger than an affair. The man in the black SUV. I should have driven away. Any normal person would have. I had already seen enough to destroy a marriage. My husband had another woman, another home, a little girl who called him daddy. That alone was enough to break my heart. But I couldn't stop looking at the black SUV parked 2 houses down. The older man inside wasn't behaving like a neighbor. He wasn't waiting for someone. He was watching, patiently, carefully, almost professionally. For over 30 minutes, he never took his eyes off the blue house. Then he picked up a small camera and took several photographs. Not just of the house, of Michael. My stomach tightened. Who was this man? A private investigator? A detective? Or someone even more dangerous? I stayed in my car until sunset. Finally, Michael walked out of the house. The little girl hugged him tightly. Promise you'll come back soon. He smiled. I promise, sweetheart. The woman kissed him goodbye. Then he got into his car and drove away. Only a few seconds later, the black SUV quietly followed him. Not too close, not too far, like someone who had done this many times before. Without thinking, I followed both of them. 3 cars, 1 secret, and no idea where any of it would end. Instead of heading toward the airport, Michael drove to a downtown hotel. He parked in the underground garage. The SUV stopped across the street. The older man stayed inside, watching, waiting. I couldn't understand any of it. If Michael wasn't flying to Chicago, why had he lied? Why meet another family? Why come to a hotel afterward? Nothing made sense anymore. I drove home that night feeling completely numb. Michael called around 9 p.m. Just landed, he said cheerfully. The flight was delayed. I closed my eyes. He wasn't even trying anymore. He was lying while I already knew the truth. How's Chicago? I asked calmly. He laughed. Cold as always. I looked out my living room window. The weather app on my television showed sunshine in Chicago. Another lie. Take care, I whispered. I love you. I love you too. The call ended. Those 4 words had never sounded so empty. Sleep never came. Around 2 in the morning, I opened an old wooden box hidden in the back of my closet. Inside were documents I hadn't touched in years. Old photographs, legal papers, a faded hospital bracelet, and 1 sealed envelope with only 3 handwritten words. If necessary, I stared at it for several seconds. My fingers rested on the envelope, but I didn't open it. Not yet. Some secrets should remain buried, until they're absolutely needed. I quietly returned the box to the closet. Michael wasn't the only one hiding the truth. The next morning, Rachel called. I've been thinking about you. I'm fine. No, you're pretending. Silence. Then she spoke softly. Emma, did something happen? For the first time, I told someone. Not everything. Just enough. I think Michael is having an affair. Rachel didn't speak for several seconds. Then she asked, Do you have proof? I saw him. Her voice became calm. Don't confront him. I want answers. You need evidence first. She was right. Feelings don't win in court. Facts do. That afternoon, I made a decision I never imagined I would make. I hired a private investigator. His name was Daniel Brooks, a former police detective with 25 years of experience. When I explained everything, he listened without interrupting. Finally, he asked one question. Do you want the truth? Or do you want your marriage back? The question caught me off guard. I don't know. He nodded. Most people don't. Then he leaned forward. If we do this, be prepared. Why? Because sometimes, the truth is much worse than what you imagine. 3 days later, Daniel called. His voice sounded unusually serious. Emma, I need you to come to my office. Did you find something? Yes. Is he married? There was a long pause. Then Daniel answered quietly. I found much more than another woman. My heart skipped a beat. What do you mean? I'd rather show you in person. An hour later, I sat across from him. He slid a thick file across the desk. Inside were dozens of photographs. Michael, the little girl, the woman, the blue house, hotel meetings, bank records, property documents. Then Daniel placed one final photograph on the table. It wasn't recent. It had been taken nearly 10 years earlier. Michael was standing beside the same older man from the black SUV. Both of them were smiling, like old friends. I looked up, confused. You said he was following Michael. Daniel slowly shook his head. No, I think they're working together. A cold chill ran down my spine. If that was true, then the man in the SUV hadn't been spying on Michael. He had been protecting him. And suddenly I realized I wasn't just uncovering my husband's secret life. I was walking into something far more dangerous. The truth was bigger than an affair. I couldn't take my eyes off the photograph. Michael stood beside the older man with an arm around his shoulder, both smiling as if they had known each other for years. "This can't be right," I whispered. Daniel folded his hands on the desk. I checked the date 3 times. The photo is almost 10 years old, but I saw that man following him. Daniel nodded. So did I. Then why would he follow Michael if they know each other? Because he wasn't following him. I frowned. He was protecting him. The word sent a chill through my body. Protecting him from whom? Daniel opened another folder. I spent the last 3 days looking into Michael's business. What did you find? On paper, everything looks perfect. He paused. But underneath, nothing makes sense. He showed me copies of company records. Michael's salary was good, comfortable, but not enough to explain everything we owned. The luxury vacations, the expensive watches, the new SUV, the private club membership. For years, I had believed he was simply good at saving money. Now, it looked like someone else had been paying for our lifestyle. There are also several bank accounts, Daniel continued. They aren't in Michael's name. Then whose are they? Shell companies. I don't understand. They're fake businesses. Businesses that existed only on paper. Money moved in. Money moved out. No real employees. No real customers. Just millions of dollars disappearing. My heart sank. This isn't just about another family. Daniel looked directly at me. No. I think your husband has been laundering money. The room felt smaller. The air heavier. The man I married wasn't just living a double life. He might be involved in serious financial crimes. I remembered every business trip, every mysterious late-night phone call, every expensive gift he brought home. How had I missed it? Or maybe I never wanted to see it. Daniel slid one final document across the desk. This woman. He pointed to the picture of the woman from the blue house. Her name is Sophia. My stomach tightened. Is she his wife? Daniel slowly shook his head. Legally, no. Then who is she? That's the strange part. According to every official record, Sophia was listed as Michael's widowed cousin. I blinked. What? But the neighbors all believe they're husband and wife. I stared at the papers. Nothing fit together anymore. That night, Michael called again from his business trip. His voice sounded relaxed. I miss you. I almost laughed. Instead, I asked, when are you coming home? Tomorrow afternoon. Safe travels. You okay? Just tired. I'll make it up to you. No need. For the first time. I meant it. After the call ended, I walked upstairs, opened the closet, pulled out the same old wooden box. This time, I opened the sealed envelope marked, if necessary. Inside was a birth certificate, a hospital record, and a handwritten letter from my late father. My hands trembled as I unfolded it. The first sentence made my eyes fill with tears. Emma, if you're reading this, it means the truth can no longer stay hidden. I kept reading. Every line revealed a piece of a secret I had buried for years. A secret I had sworn never to use unless I had no other choice. When I reached the final page, I closed my eyes. Everything suddenly made sense. Michael thought he was the only one hiding another life. He had no idea that my real identity wasn't the one he had married, and if he forced me to reveal the truth, his entire world would collapse. The secret I buried years ago. I stared at my father's letter for what felt like hours. The paper had turned slightly yellow with age. His handwriting was as neat as I remembered. Every word carried the weight of a promise he had made to me long ago. Emma, there may come a day when someone betrays your trust. If that day ever arrives, remember this. Never seek revenge out of anger. Seek the truth first. Justice lasts longer than revenge. A tear rolled down my cheek. My father had always believed that the truth was the strongest weapon a person could have. Back then, I hadn't understood what he meant. Now, I finally did. The envelope contained 3 things. My birth certificate, a legal adoption order, and a second birth certificate with a different name. I wasn't born Emma Carter. My real name had been Emily Harper. When I was 8 years old, my biological parents died in a suspicious house fire. The case was never solved. After that tragedy, my father, who had been my godfather, legally adopted me. To protect me from people connected to that fire, he changed my identity. Only 3 people had ever known the truth. My father, our family lawyer, and me. No one else. Not even Michael. For years, I had convinced myself that the past belonged in the past. I built a new life, a new name, a new future. When Michael proposed, I wanted our marriage to begin with hope, not fear. So I never told him, not because I didn't trust him, because I wanted to leave the pain behind forever. Ironically, the biggest secret in our marriage had belonged to both of us. The next morning, Daniel called. I found something. His voice was urgent. What is it? I need you to stay calm. I'll try. I traced one of the shell companies, and it leads to a charity. A charity? Yes, but it doesn't actually help anyone. Instead, donations disappeared through fake contracts. The money was moved between different companies until it became impossible to trace. And Michael! He's one of the people signing the transfers. I closed my eyes. So it's true. I'm afraid so. Daniel hesitated before speaking again. There's something else. My heart sank. What now? I checked Sophia's background. What did you find? She isn't just pretending to be Michael's wife. Then what? She believes she actually is. The room fell silent. What do you mean? According to several neighbors, they've been introducing themselves as husband and wife for almost 7 years. 7 years. Michael and I had been married for 6. That meant his second life had started before our wedding. Maybe even before he met me. That evening, Michael came home carrying flowers. My favorite white lilies. He smiled the same warm smile that had once made me fall in love. I missed you. I forced myself to smile. I missed you too. For the first time in my life, I lied to my husband. Dinner felt painfully normal. He talked about Chicago, clients, meetings, restaurants he had supposedly visited. Every story was detailed, confident, completely false. The frightening part wasn't that he lied. It was how natural lying had become. Later that night, after he fell asleep, I quietly unlocked the drawer in his home office. I had searched it dozens of times before, always finding nothing. This time, something was different. A single key lay beneath a stack of documents. It hadn't been there before. Tiny, silver, with the number 317 engraved on it. The next morning, while Michael was at work, Daniel met me outside a downtown storage facility. He looked at the key. I know this place. We walked inside. The manager checked the number. Unit 317. He looked at his records. Registered to Michael Thompson. My pulse quickened. The manager unlocked the door. As the metal shutter rolled upward, I expected to find boxes, old furniture, business files. Instead, the room was filled from floor to ceiling with locked filing cabinets, stacks of cash, passports under different names, and shelves packed with sealed boxes. At the center of the room sat a large fireproof safe. Daniel slowly whispered, Emma, this isn't just evidence. I looked around the room in disbelief. This is an entire hidden life. And then, from somewhere behind the storage units, we heard footsteps. Someone else had just entered the building. The storage unit. The footsteps grew louder. Slow, steady, getting closer with every second. Daniel quickly switched off the flashlight and whispered, Don't move. The storage unit fell silent. I could hear nothing except my own heartbeat. The footsteps stopped just outside Unit 317. Someone tried the handle. Locked. A low voice muttered, Strange. Daniel placed a finger over his lips, signaling me to stay completely still. For nearly 30 seconds, nobody moved. Then the footsteps slowly faded away. Only after the building became quiet again did Daniel exhale. We were lucky, he whispered. Who was it? I don't know, but whoever it was expected this unit to be empty. Daniel pulled on a pair of gloves before opening the nearest filing cabinet. Inside were dozens of folders, each labeled with names, dates, and account numbers. None of the names belonged to Michael. They were all aliases. This was planned, Daniel said quietly. For years. I looked around the room again. The shelves were filled with expensive watches, stacks of foreign currency, sealed envelopes, and several unopened passports. One passport caught my attention. The photo was Michael's, but the name wasn't. David Collins. I stared at it in disbelief. How many lives has he been living? Daniel didn't answer. He didn't have to. Then he opened the fireproof safe. Inside was a thick black notebook. Unlike everything else in the room, it looked old, worn, used, almost treasured. Daniel handed it to me. Read the first page. My hands trembled as I opened it. The first line read, Rules for Survival. Below it were names, dates, payments, meetings, and one sentence written in bold black ink. Never tell the whole truth to anyone, not even family. A chill ran through my body. Michael hadn't simply become a liar. He had been trained to live that way. As Daniel continued searching, he suddenly stopped. Emma! His voice had changed. What? He was holding a photograph. It showed Michael standing beside the older man from the black SUV. Between them stood a younger woman. I recognized her immediately. Sophia. Daniel nodded. But look closer. I did. Sophia wasn't smiling. She looked frightened, almost trapped. One of her wrists was covered by a long sleeve, but the fabric had slipped just enough to reveal dark bruises. My stomach turned. What if she isn't part of this willingly? Daniel looked thoughtful. That's exactly what I'm starting to believe. Just then, my phone vibrated. Michael calling. I froze. He never calls during work. Daniel whispered. Answer it. Act normal. I took a deep breath and picked up. Hi. Hey, Michael said cheerfully. Where are you? At home. The lie left my mouth so easily that it surprised even me. What are you doing? Just cleaning the house. He laughed. You always find something to organize. Then, his tone changed. Emma. Yes. Have you been through my office lately? Every muscle in my body tensed. No. Why? A long silence followed. Then he chuckled. Nothing. I just couldn't remember where I left something. He ended the call. Daniel looked at me. He knows. How? I don't know. But I guarantee you. He's suspicious. We left the storage unit exactly as we found it. Nothing moved. Nothing missing. As we walked toward the parking lot, Daniel suddenly grabbed my arm. Don't look. What? We're being watched. I kept walking. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw the same black SUV parked across the street. The older man sat behind the wheel. This time, he wasn't pretending. He looked directly at me. Then, very slowly, he smiled. Not a friendly smile. A warning. As the SUV drove away, Daniel quietly said, This just became dangerous. That evening, I returned home before Michael. Everything looked normal. Too normal. I walked into the kitchen and stopped. A bouquet of fresh white lilies sat on the table. Attached to it was a handwritten note. To my beautiful wife. Some secrets should stay buried. For your own safety. Michael. The flowers slipped from my hands and crashed onto the floor. He knew. Not everything. But enough to send me a message. And for the first time since our marriage began, I realized I wasn't hunting Michael anymore. Michael was hunting me. The trap. The note lay on the kitchen floor. Some secrets should stay buried. For your own safety. I read it 3 times. Michael had never threatened me before. Not directly. That was what made it so frightening. It didn't sound like the words of an angry husband. It sounded like the warning of a man who knew exactly what he was capable of. I picked up the card and slipped it into a plastic evidence bag Daniel had given me. Every detail mattered now. Every fingerprint. Every word. 10 minutes later, the front door opened. Emma! Michael called. I'm in the kitchen. He walked in wearing his usual warm smile. The same smile that had fooled me for 6 years. Did you like the flowers? They're beautiful. He kissed my forehead. For a moment, I wondered how many times he had kissed another woman the same way. I thought we could go out for dinner tonight, he said. Just the 2 of us. It wasn't an invitation. It felt like a test. I smiled. I'd love that. His eyes searched my face for several seconds, as if he were looking for guilt or fear. Then he smiled again. Perfect. An hour later, we sat in one of the most expensive restaurants in the city. Soft music played in the background. Candles flickered between us. To everyone around us, we looked like a happy couple celebrating an anniversary. Only we knew the truth. Michael ordered my favorite meal without asking. He remembered everything. My favorite wine. My favorite dessert. Even the way I like my steak cooked. It was heartbreaking. Because somewhere beneath all the lies, the man I had loved had once been real. Or maybe, he had simply become very good at pretending. Halfway through dinner, Michael reached across the table. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Do you trust me?" The question almost made me laugh. Instead, I looked into his eyes. "Why would you ask that?" He shrugged. "I don't know. I guess people change. So do marriages." I nodded slowly. "They do." Neither of us touched our food after that. The next morning, Daniel called before sunrise. "I found Sophia." My heart skipped a beat. "Is she okay?" "I met her." "You what?" "She agreed to talk." I grabbed my keys immediately. "Where are you?" Sophia lived in a small apartment 20 miles away. Not the blue house. The blue house had been rented. It wasn't her real home. When I walked inside, she looked exhausted. Dark circles surrounded her eyes. She held a cup of coffee with shaking hands. She looked at me for a long moment before speaking. "So, you're Emma." I nodded. "And you're Sophia." A painful silence filled the room. Finally, she whispered, "I'm sorry." I frowned. "For what?" "For believing his lies." She began to cry. "I didn't know about you." "What?" "He told me his wife died years ago." My breath caught. "He showed me pictures. He wore a wedding ring. He cried when he talked about losing you." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "He told me we were building a new life together." She looked down. "Our daughter isn't even his." I blinked. "What?" "Her father died before she was born. When Michael came into our lives, he promised he'd raise her as his own. The little girl wasn't his biological daughter, but she believed he was her father. My heart broke for her. She was innocent, just like Sophia." Then Sophia said something that changed everything. "Emma, there's something you need to know." "What?" "Michael doesn't work for the man in the black SUV. He works for someone much higher." My stomach tightened. "Who?" She slowly shook her head. "I don't know his real name. We only called him the director. He controls everything. The money, the fake companies, the fake identities, even Michael." Daniel leaned forward. "Can you prove it?" Sophia nodded. "I stole something." She walked into the bedroom and returned with a small flash drive. I copied every file I could find before I escaped. Daniel carefully took the drive. "If what's on here is real, this could expose the entire organization." Before anyone could say another word, a loud crash echoed from outside. Someone had thrown a brick through the living room window. Glass exploded across the floor. Wrapped around the brick was a folded piece of paper. Daniel picked it up. His face turned pale. "What is it?" I asked. He handed it to me. It contained only one sentence. "Stop digging, or the next funeral will be yours." The room fell silent. This was no longer about betrayal. No longer about marriage. We had just declared war against people who would do anything to protect their secrets. The flash drive. The room fell into complete silence. The brick lay on the floor, surrounded by shattered glass. The note was still in my hand. "Stop digging, or the next funeral will be yours." Sophia began to cry. "They found us." Daniel immediately closed the curtains. "No," he said calmly. "They want you to believe they know everything." He turned to me. "We leave. Right now." 10 minutes later, the three of us were inside Daniel's office. He locked every door before placing the flash drive into his computer. "This is either the key to everything, or a trap." The screen lit up. There were hundreds of folders, financial records, photos, voice recordings, surveillance videos. Everything was carefully organized. Then one folder caught my attention. Project Phoenix. Daniel opened it. Inside was a spreadsheet containing dozens of names. Some were crossed out in red. Some had green check marks beside them. At the very top, I saw Michael's name. Next to it were two chilling words. Active asset. "What does that mean?" I whispered. Daniel's expression darkened. "It means your husband isn't running this operation. He's working for it." Another folder contained secret recordings. Daniel clicked the first audio file. A man's voice filled the room. It was Michael. "I've gained her complete trust." Another voice answered. "Good. Does she know anything?" No. She believes everything I've told her. The recording ended. I felt sick. When was this recorded? Daniel checked the file. 6 years ago. Exactly 1 week before our wedding. Everything had been planned. Even our marriage. I struggled to breathe. So, he never loved me? Daniel didn't answer. Sophia gently reached for my hand. But before anyone could speak, another recording started automatically. This time, the second voice sounded familiar. Very familiar. I closed my eyes. No! It can't be! Daniel turned toward me. You know him. I nodded slowly. I've heard that voice before. But where? I searched my memory. Then suddenly, I remembered. The funeral. My father's funeral. The same deep voice had stood beside his grave. The same man had shaken my hand. The same man had looked into my eyes and said, "Your father was a good man." A cold wave of fear rushed through me. The director. I've met him before. Daniel froze. When? 15 years ago. Did your father know him? I don't know. But he definitely knew my father. The room became eerily quiet. Then Daniel whispered, Emma, I think your father's death may not have been an accident either. The words hit me like a train. 4 years, I had believed my father died of a heart attack. Now, everything I believed about my past was falling apart. Daniel continued searching through the flash drive. Then he opened one final folder. It contained only one video. No title. No date. Just a black screen. He clicked play. The image slowly appeared. A conference room. Several people sat around a long table. One of them was Michael. At the head of the table sat a man whose face was hidden in shadow. Nobody called him by name. Only one title. Director. Then the man spoke. We have one remaining problem. Michael asked. Emma. The director slowly nodded. Yes. If she ever discovers who she really is, everything we've built will collapse. My blood turned to ice. He knew my real identity. Before I ever met Michael, he already knew who I was. The director leaned forward and gave one final order. If necessary, eliminate her. The video ended. No one in the room spoke. Finally, Daniel looked at me. This was never a love story. It was an operation. And somewhere out there, Michael had just become the man assigned to destroy the woman he had married. The truth Michael never told. For several minutes, no one said a word. The final sentence from the video echoed through the room. If necessary, eliminate her. My hands were shaking. I kept asking myself the same question. Had every smile, every hug, every I love you been a lie? Daniel quietly closed the laptop. We can't stay here. Why? Because if they know that flash drive exists, they'll come looking for it. Sophia looked terrified. What do we do now? Daniel reached into his desk drawer and pulled out another flash drive. He copied all the files onto it. If anything happens to us, this copy goes straight to federal investigators. For the first time since all of this began, I felt a small sense of hope. That evening, I made the hardest decision of my life. I went home, alone. Daniel tried to stop me. It's too dangerous. I need answers. You already have answers. No. I need to hear them from Michael. The house was dark when I arrived. Only the lamp in the living room was on. Michael was sitting on the couch. He wasn't surprised to see me. In fact, he looked as though he had been waiting. You've been busy, he said quietly. I placed my purse on the table. So have you. Neither of us smiled. Neither of us pretended anymore. Michael stood up slowly. I know you met Sophia. I froze. You had us followed. I had to. Why? Because they're watching you. The director? He looked down. For the first time, real fear appeared on his face. You know about him. I know enough. He closed his eyes. I never wanted this. I laughed bitterly. Which part? The second family? The lies? Or the order to kill me? His face turned pale. Who told you that? I heard it with my own ears. Michael sank into a chair. For nearly a minute, he said nothing. Then, he whispered, I was never supposed to fall in love with you. The words hit harder than I expected. When I met you, you were only a target. My job was simple. Get close. Earn your trust. Find out what you knew. I felt tears filling my eyes. And then I was supposed to disappear. What changed? You. He looked directly at me. I actually fell in love with you. I wanted to believe him. Part of me still did. But another part remembered every lie, every betrayal, every secret. If you loved me, why didn't you tell me the truth? He looked broken. Because once you're inside that organization, there's no way out. Michael walked to the bookshelf. From behind a row of old novels, he removed a sealed envelope. He handed it to me. If anything ever happened, I was going to give you this. Inside were photographs, old newspaper articles, government reports, and one faded picture. It showed my biological parents, standing beside the director. I felt the room spin. What is this? Michael spoke softly. Your parents didn't die by accident. They tried to expose him, and they paid with their lives. I could barely breathe. My father knew. Michael nodded. That's why he changed your identity. He spent years hiding you. Everything suddenly made sense. The adoption, the false name, the sealed letter. It had all been to keep me alive. Before I could ask another question, a loud explosion shattered every window in the house. Glass flew across the room. The lights went out. The security alarm screamed. Outside, 3 black SUVs surrounded the property. Men dressed in black tactical gear stepped out. Each carried a weapon. A voice thundered through a loudspeaker. Michael Thompson, bring Emma Carter outside. This is your only warning. Michael grabbed my hand. His voice was calm, but urgent. It's too late. They found us. He pulled open a hidden door beneath the staircase. A narrow underground tunnel stretched into darkness. He looked into my eyes and said, If you still trust me, follow me. I had only seconds to decide. The man who had lied to me for 6 years was now my only chance of surviving. The final truth, finale. The alarm echoed through the house. Glass covered the living room floor. Outside, the black SUVs blocked every exit. Men in tactical gear surrounded the property. Michael grabbed my hand. Emma, there's no time. For a split second, I looked into his eyes. For 6 years, those eyes had lied to me. But in that moment, I saw something I hadn't seen in a long time. Fear. Not for himself. For me. I made my decision. I'm coming. We climbed into the narrow tunnel beneath the house. Michael pulled the hidden door shut behind us. Darkness swallowed everything. The tunnel was damp and silent except for our footsteps. Where does this lead? I whispered. An abandoned train station about a mile away. How do you know about it? Because I built it with them. His answer hurt, but at least it was honest. For the first time in years, Michael had stopped lying. Behind us, we heard a loud crash. They're inside the house, Michael said. We have to move. We ran. The tunnel seemed endless. Then, just as we reached a rusted metal door, a voice echoed from behind. Stop! Flashlights filled the tunnel. The director's men had found the entrance. Bullets struck the concrete walls around us. Michael pushed me through the doorway. Run! What about you? I'll hold them off. No! Emma! His voice was louder than I had ever heard it. If you ever loved me, don't look back. I ran. Tears blurred my vision. Behind me, I heard shouting. Then, a single gunshot. Then another. Silence. I wanted to go back. Every part of me wanted to. But I remembered my father's words. Justice lasts longer than revenge. I kept running. Outside the abandoned station, Daniel was waiting. You made it. Michael! I know. We heard the gunshots. Before I could answer, police sirens filled the air. Not just police. Federal agents. Dozens of vehicles surrounded the area. Daniel smiled for the first time in days. They got the files. The flash drive. He nodded. It reached them this morning. At the same time, agents raided offices across 3 states. Shell companies were shut down. Bank accounts were frozen. Secret warehouses were searched. The director's organization began to collapse within hours. Sophia and her daughter were placed under federal protection. Every document from the flash drive matched the evidence investigators had already been collecting for years. The empire built on lies was finally falling apart. But one question remained. Where was Michael? For 2 days, no one found him. Then, the police recovered a badly injured man from the tunnel. It was Michael. He had survived. He had stayed behind to delay the attackers long enough for me to escape. Months later, I visited him in a federal detention center. The room was quiet. A glass wall separated us. Michael looked older, tired, broken. "I never expected you'd come," he said. I sat down. "I needed to." He smiled sadly. "I don't deserve forgiveness." "No, you don't." Silence filled the room. Then he quietly asked, "Did you ever love me?" I looked at him for a long moment. "Yes, even after everything. I loved the man I believed you were." A tear rolled down his cheek. "I'm sorry." "I know." Those were the last words we ever spoke. A year later, the director was convicted on multiple charges, including fraud, money laundering, conspiracy, and arranging several murders. He was sentenced to spend the rest of his life in prison. Many victims finally received justice. Sophia and her daughter started a new life in another state. Daniel retired after helping close the case that had haunted him for years. As for me, I reopened my interior design business. I bought a small house by the lake. Every morning, I drank my coffee on the porch and watched the sunrise. For the first time in years, I felt peace. One evening, while cleaning an old box, I found my father's letter again. This time I smiled. He had been right. Revenge might satisfy your anger, but truth changes your future. I folded the letter carefully and placed it back in the box. Then I looked out across the water. The past had finally let go of me, and for the first time, I was truly free. The end.